Hi there, students. Pronunciation exercise number 24. You'd have been, you would have been. Okay? So just listen. You'd have been a big boss. You'd have been a big boss. You'd have been a big boss. You'd have been an obese big boss. You'd have been you'd have been an obese big boss. You'd have you'd have been an obese boss, an obese big boss. You'd have been the best obese big boss. You'd have been the best obese big boss. You'd 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 have you'd have you'd have been the best obese big boss. Okay, and the next. You'd have been the obnoxious obese boss. You'd you'd have been the obnoxious or the obnoxious obese big boss. Now some negatives. You wouldn't have been a big boss. You wouldn't have been a big boss. You wouldn't have been a big boss. You wouldn't have been. And the next. You wouldn't have been a big obese boss. Sorry. You wouldn't have been an obese big boss. You wouldn't have been an obese big boss. You wouldn't have been an obese big boss. Wouldn't have been an okay. You wouldn't have been the best obese big boss. You wouldn't have been the best. Sorry. You wouldn't have been the best obese big boss. You wouldn't have been. So you wouldn't have been the best. Soft on the again. You wouldn't have been the obnoxious sorry. You wouldn't have been the obnoxious obese boss. You wouldn't have been the obnoxious obese boss. You wouldn't have been the obnoxious obese boss. And the questions. Would you have been a big boss? Would you have been a big boss? Would you have been would you have been would you have been a big boss? Would you have been would you have been would you have been would you have been an obese big boss? Would you have been an obese big boss? Would you have been okay? Notice this. Would you have been would you have been a big obese boss? Been an obese big boss? Okay, and the next. Would you have been the best obese big boss? Would you have been the best obese big boss? Would you have been the best? Okay, the best. Would you have been the best? Been the best. Would you have been the best obese big boss? Last one. Would you have been the obnoxious big... Sorry. Would you have been the obnoxious obese boss? Would you have been the obnoxious Would you have been the obnoxious obese boss? Would you have been the obnoxious obese boss? Okay. So, would you have been the obnoxious or the obnoxious obese boss? Would you have been the obnoxious obese boss? Let me read these slowly, or a little more slowly. You'd have been a big boss. You'd have been an obese big boss. You'd have been the best obese big boss. You'd have been the obnoxious obese boss. You wouldn't have been a big boss. You wouldn't have been an obese big boss. You wouldn't have been the best obese big boss. You wouldn't have been the obnoxious obese boss. Would you have been a big boss? Would you have been the... Sorry, would you have been would you have been an obese big boss? Would you have been the best obese big boss? Would you have been the obnoxious obese boss? Anyway, I hope that's helped. Anyway, if you enjoyed it, give it a rating, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.